Every time my driver picked me up for work, his girlfriend came along for the ride. Since it was on the way, I never made an issue of it. Until the day I opened the car door and found a note stuck to my seat in the back. Freeloaders not allowed in this car. I peeled it off and turned to the driver. What's this? His girlfriend sat in the passenger seat, glaring at me with open contempt. Can't you read? Every single day you ride off my boyfriend. Have you no shame? If you can't afford a cab, stay home. God, I can't stand leeches like you. I stared at her, completely baffled. The driver hurried to my side and whispered an explanation. Miss Pwitt, my girlfriend doesn't know I'm a chauffeur. She gets jealous easily. The note's just her way of showing she cares. He paused, then added. Also, she's not comfortable sharing a car with you. Let me drop her off first, then I'll come back for you. Before I could respond, he'd already climbed behind the wheel of my own car and driven off. I stood on the curb watching the taillights vanish. Then, calmly, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Hello, a man and a woman just took my car without permission. I'd like to report a theft. Never in my life had I imagined that, as CEO of a publicly traded company, someone would look me dead in the eye and call me a freeloader. And the car they'd just driven off in was mine. 20 minutes later, a squad car pulled up in front of me. The officers had barely stepped out when Alfred Lawrence came tearing around the corner in my black Maybach. He slammed the brakes, lurching to a stop just feet away, and jumped out, face chalk white. Miss Pwitt, what happened? Why'd you call the police? I said nothing. One of the officers sized him up. Are you the individual Miss Pwitt says took her vehicle without authorization? The color drained even further from Alfred's face. No, officers, this is all a misunderstanding, he said, hands raised, palms out. I'm Miss Pwitt's driver. I drive her every day. I just dropped someone off on the way, took a few extra minutes, that's all. Nobody stole anything. He gestured frantically at the Maybach behind him, forcing a grin. See, I brought it right back. The officers glanced at me, then back at him. Miss Pwitt, do you want to press charges? Before I could answer, Alfred leaned in close, voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Miss Pwitt, please, for my father's sake. He drove for you for years. Just let this one go. He swallowed hard. My dad's health isn't good. I finally found a girlfriend, and it's the one thing he wanted from me. What I did back there was just to keep the peace between us. I had no choice. The mention of his father softened something in me. Owen Lawrence had been my chauffeur for 6 years. Honest, dependable, steady behind the wheel, never once a source of trouble. In all that time, he'd never been late, never gotten a single violation. Every holiday when I handed him a bonus, he'd try to wave it off for a good 5 minutes before finally accepting. 3 months ago, Owen was diagnosed with a lung condition requiring long-term rest and had no choice but to resign. On his last day, he stood in my office, rough hands twisting together, clearly wanting to say something but unable to get it out. Finally, face flushed with embarrassment, he told me his son Alfred had just lost his job. If the company had an opening, could I give the boy a chance? But starting last month, things changed. The first day it happened, Alfred came to pick me up, and there was suddenly a heavily made-up woman sitting in the passenger seat. I stared, confused. Alfred hurried around to open my door and explained in a low voice, Miss Pwitt, this is my girlfriend, Kara Fox. Her workplace is on the way to the office, so I figured I'd give her a lift. I nodded and said nothing. Giving someone a ride along the way wasn't a big deal, but slowly something started to feel off. What was supposed to be incidental became a fixed daily routine that never varied. Every morning, Alfred picked up Kara first, then came for me. At first, Kara just liked snapping photos in the passenger seat and posting them, showing off that she was riding in a Maybach. Fine, she was young. A little vanity was normal. What I couldn't understand was the look she gave me every single time, pure disgust, as if I owed her a fortune. A few times after I got in, she'd spray perfume in my direction and complain loudly. God, this is so annoying. How does a car this expensive always reek of something cheap? I actually thought something smelled off at first, so I told Alfred to get the car deep cleaned and disinfected. But she only got worse. Sometimes after I stepped out, she'd spray disinfectant over the seat I'd just occupied. Other times, she'd lay a disposable seat, cover down, before I even got in. When I brought it up with Alfred, he always gave the same sheepish excuse in private. Miss Pwitt, Kara's just worried the car isn't clean enough and might stain your clothes. She's particular about hygiene, that's all. I didn't think much of it. I had far too much on my plate every day, deals worth hundreds of millions passing through my hands, and no energy to squabble with some young girl over petty nonsense. Not until this morning, when I found the note stuck to my usual seat, did it all click. Kara actually believed I was the freeloader. I'd been ready to teach both Alfred and Kara a lesson, but now Alfred was on his knees in front of me, begging. Miss Pwitt, I swear it'll never happen again. I'll set Kara straight today. I'll never give her rides again. Please, my father's health isn't good. For his sake, forgive me this once. Thinking of Owen, I sighed. Forget it. I'm dropping it. After the officers left, Alfred let out a heavy breath of relief, thanking me over and over, his attitude suddenly flawless. I said nothing more, got in the car, and told him to take me to the office. For a while after that, Alfred actually behaved. Every time he picked me up, the passenger seat sat empty, no sign of Kara. The car had been cleaned too, every trace of the note scrubbed away. His driving stayed smooth, no complaints there. The only issue was that he kept showing up late, always with an excuse. Sorry, Miss Pewitt. There was an accident up the road. Traffic was backed up for a while. I'm really sorry. My alarm didn't go off. I overslept. Miss Pewitt, a pipe burst in my apartment. I was dealing with the neighbors downstairs about the water damage. The excuses always sounded thin, but since his attitude stayed decent, I let it go. I thought that was the end of it. Then one weekend, on a whim, I decided to spend a couple of days at the suburban villa for a short getaway. I called Alfred. Where are you right now? I need to go somewhere. Come pick me up. He hemmed and hawed before finally answering, careful and measured. Miss Pewitt, I woke up this morning and found the car had a flat. I'm at the shop getting it fixed now. The mechanic says it won't be ready until tomorrow. Where were you headed? I can call you a car if you'd like. I frowned, not wanting the hassle. Forget it. I'll grab a cab myself. After hanging up, I hailed a ride out to the villa. But arriving at the front gate, I froze. My Maybach sat parked right outside, completely intact. I stared at it for several seconds, and once I confirmed it really was my car, I quickened my pace to the front door. It was ajar. I pushed it open, and the sight inside knocked the air out of me. The living room was wrecked. Empty bottles, fruit peels, sunflower seed shells, and cigarette butts littered the coffee table and floor. The sofa and carpet, worth hundreds of thousands, were covered in dirty footprints, and in several spots cigarette burns had eaten black holes clean through the fabric. My gaze swept the room and landed on the couch facing the door. Kara sat there, surrounded by a crowd. Kara, you're so lucky to have found such a powerful boyfriend, right? Not just rich, but so good to you. You mentioned wanting roasted sweet potatoes, and he ran out to get them like a puppy. When you're a trophy wife, don't forget about us little people, okay? Kara's lips curled into a smug grin. She was about to answer when she glanced up and spotted me in the doorway. Her smile vanished. She stood, heels clicking against the floor as she strode toward me, chin raised. Crack. Without a word, she slapped me hard across the face. You, shameless. You followed my boyfriend here. The blow came out of nowhere. I stood rooted to the spot, cheek burning, everyone in the room staring wide-eyed. Kara, what's going on? Someone asked. Kara jabbed a finger at me, face twisted with disgust. This is the freeloader I've been telling you about. Mooching rides off my boyfriend wasn't enough. Now she's showing up to mooch off his house too. I looked at her in disbelief. Who told you this is Alfred's house? Kara laughed sharply. He did. Told me himself. You pathetic little gold digger. You found out my boyfriend's the CEO of the company, so now you're pulling every trick in the book to get close to him. Bumming rides every day, manufacturing excuses to be alone with him. And that wasn't enough. Now you've crawled to his villa to throw yourself at him. Let me make one thing crystal clear. Alfred told me he only drives you to and from work because you're an employee at his company. He's being generous. Don't mistake his kindness for an invitation. That was the story Alfred had fed her. No wonder Kara had always treated me like dirt. In her mind, Alfred owned the luxury car and the villa. He was the CEO, and I was just some employee under him. All this time, Kara believed I was the one mooching rides in Alfred's car, shamelessly trying to seduce her boyfriend. What a joke. Kara turned to her friends and announced at the top of her lungs, "You want to know how shameless this really is? She parks herself in my boyfriend's car every single day. You literally can't get rid of her." I even left a note telling her to knock it off, and she threw a fit and called the cops, claiming he was harassing an employee. So my boyfriend had to start dropping me off at the office first, then double back to drive her, just to keep up appearances for the company's sake. I've never in my life seen a more shameless piece of trash. My eyes went wide. That was why Alfred had been late picking me up every day. He'd been sneaking off to drive Kara around first, then coming back for me. Well played, Alfred. Well played. You want to treat me like a fool? Then don't blame me for what comes next. I pulled out my phone right there and dialed the legal department. Get a team to my villa at Peach Blossom right now. Before I could finish, Kara snatched the phone from my hand and hurled it against the floor. Then her gaze dropped to my neck and her eyes lit up. That jade pendant doesn't look cheap. Let me guess, you spread your legs for some sugar daddy to buy it. She grabbed the chain and ripped it off my neck. It happened so fast, so violently. I had no time to react before the necklace was in her hand. The blood drained from my face. Give it back. My panic only sharpened her smile. She dangled the pendant just out of reach. This must be worth a fortune. It's worthless, I blurted, lunging for it, but it means everything to me. Give it back now. I grabbed for it, desperate. That jade pendant was a protective charm my mother had given her life to obtain. I'd been sickly since birth. At 4 years old, I was hospitalized in critical condition, unconscious and fading. Doctors told my parents to start making arrangements. My mother refused to accept it. She went to a temple to pray for me, and to prove the sincerity of her devotion, she set out in the scorching heat of a 100-degree summer and prostrated herself the entire way, one bow for every step from the base of the mountain to its peak. By the time she reached the top, her knees were torn to raw flesh, white bone visible beneath the blood, her forehead split open, consciousness flickering. Only then was she granted the pendant. Perhaps heaven itself was moved by what she'd done, because against all odds, I woke up. But my mother never recovered. On her deathbed, she pressed the necklace into my palm and made me swear to keep it safe. I'd treasured it beyond measure ever since, carrying it with me every single day of my life. Before I could reach it, Kara hurled the necklace to the ground with all her strength. A sharp crack split the air. The jade shattered into pieces, fragments scattering across the floor. No, my mother's pendant, the one she'd traded her life for, gone just like that. The pain in my chest was so sharp I couldn't breathe. You're an animal. Something in me snapped. I swung and slapped Kara across the face as hard as I could. Kara shrieked, clutching her cheek. Beat her within an inch of her life. Her voice pitched higher. Whoever does the best job gets $1 million. The words landed like a starting pistol. Her friend's eyes lit up and they descended on me in a frenzy of fists and kicks. You actually hit Kara? She's about to become the wife of the Grand View Group CEO. Who do you think you are? They beat me to the ground. My whole body shook with rage. I gritted my teeth and forced out the words. You're going to regret this. The room erupted in laughter, every one of them throwing their heads back as if I'd told the funniest joke they'd ever heard. They pinned me down, mocking and humiliating me without a shred of restraint. Surrounded by her cheering entourage, Kara grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked my head up, face twisted in vicious triumph. Regret? I've never regretted a single thing in my life. She leaned closer. Go ahead. Show me what a worthless piece of trash like you can do to make me regret it. The words had barely left her mouth when the roar of engines filled the air. Not one car, not two. The sound built in layers. The low growl of a convoy, tires on gravel, doors opening in sequence. Through the villa's front windows, I could see headlights sweeping the driveway. Kara's fist was still in my hair, but her grip had loosened. The room went completely quiet, and in that quiet, I watched the confidence drain from her face, 1 degree at a time. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The front door opened. Marcus, my head of security, entered first, 6'2", with the particular stillness of a man who'd spent 20 years learning how to fill a room without raising his voice. Behind him came 2 members of my legal team, 2 senior executives from Grand View Group, and 4 additional security personnel who fanned out through the villa with the quiet efficiency of people who'd done this before. Marcus looked at me on the floor. He looked at Kara's fist still tangled in my hair. He looked at the wrecked living room, the cigarette burns, the bottles, the jade fragments scattered near my knee. His expression didn't change. It was the expression of a man about to be very thorough. Madam CEO. He crossed the room in 4 steps, crouched beside me, and extended a hand. Are you able to stand? The room shattered, not literally, but I felt the exact moment Kara's world cracked along every seam at once. She let go of my hair. I took Marcus's hand and stood. My body ached where Kara's friends had kicked and hit me. One wrist had taken a bad impact, but I kept my posture, straight spine, even breath. I looked around at all the faces staring back. Kara, her friends frozen mid-violence, empty bottles and cigarette burns behind them. Document everything, I told my legal team. Every room, every surface. I want photographs of every single damage point before anyone touches anything. The legal team moved at once. One of Kara's friends made a small, involuntary sound, like someone stepping on a stair they didn't know was loose. Who? Kara started, her voice thinner now, the sharp confidence gone. Who is she? Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. Alfred arrived 4 minutes later, pushing through the front door with a small paper bag, roasted sweet potatoes, the smell reaching the room before he did. He was still wearing the posture of a man mid-romantic gesture, already arranging his face into the expression he wore when bringing Kara things she asked for. He walked in. He stopped. He saw Marcus. He saw the legal team photographing the burns on the carpet. He saw his girlfriend standing very still in the middle of the room. He saw me. The bag dropped, sweet potatoes rolling through cigarette ash and broken glass. Miss Pewitt. His voice had no volume left. Alfred, I said quietly, tell everyone in this room who owns this villa. He stood there, said nothing. Kara turned to him with the desperate urgency of someone needing one specific answer immediately. Tell them, she said. Tell them this is your house. Tell them you're the CEO. He looked at Kara, then at me, then at Marcus's unreadable face. Alfred, I said again, not loud, just final. The silence lasted long enough that the friend who'd been filming videos presumably already uploaded with captions half-written, quietly lowered her phone. Alfred closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. It's her house, he said. Something remarkable happened to Kara's face. The certainty collapsed. Understanding hadn't arrived yet. That would take a few more seconds, but the raw sensation of the ground shifting had. What? The villa is hers? Alfred's voice had gone flat, past something. The car is hers. Grandview Group. He stopped, started again. I'm her driver. That's what I am. I'm her driver. Kara turned back to me. I watched her process it, watched the story she'd been living in for weeks take itself apart and reveal what had been underneath all along. The woman she'd called a freeloader. The woman she'd sprayed disinfectant at. The woman she'd left disposable seat covers for. The woman she'd had her friends beat while holding her down by the hair. You, Kara started. I'm the CEO of Grandview Group, I said. The car Alfred drives is mine. This villa is mine. The company Alfred told you he ran is mine. You've been a guest in my home, uninvited. For how long, Alfred? He wouldn't look at either of us. How long have you been bringing Kara here? 6 weeks, he said to the floor. 6 weeks. I looked around the room. The sofa scarred with cigarette burns. The carpet with its dirty footprints. The coffee table barely visible under the debris. My mother's pendant, in pieces on the floor near my feet. 6 weeks of using my property, lying about who you were, and letting someone treat me with contempt in my own vehicle and my own home. Kara's friends had started doing the thing people do when they realize they've made a catastrophic error, the slow, subtle distancing. One had stepped toward the wall. Another was tucking her phone away. A third sat down, staring at the floor, hoping to be overlooked. Kara noticed. You didn't know either, she said to the nearest one, voice going shrill at the edges. We all thought Alfred was the CEO. You believed it too. We were just hanging out, the woman said. Not a defense, a calculation. You're the one who said it was his house. He told me. I didn't smash anything. Another friend chimed in, glancing at Marcus. I didn't break anything. I was just here. You told her to beat me within an inch of my life, I said, steady, factual. While I was on the floor, you participated. Silence. My team has been recording since they entered the villa, Marcus said to the room. He didn't need to say anything else. I looked at the friend who'd been filming the whole time. Whatever you uploaded from today, I said, we'll be using it as evidence. Thank you for preserving it. She made that sound again, the loose stare sound. The police arrived 20 minutes later. By then, my legal team had documented every damaged surface, bagged the jade fragments from the floor, pulled the dashcam footage from the Maybach, and confirmed the villa's security system had recorded everything that happened in the living room from the moment Kara slapped me. Kara tried talking to the officers first, moving toward them with the energy of someone who'd spent her whole life performing distress effectively. Officer, this is a misunderstanding. I was invited to this property. One of the officers held up a hand, not unkind, but clear. Please step back. We'll take statements from everyone. She attacked me, Kara said, pointing at me. She came here and attacked me first. I said nothing. I let my legal team speak. My attorney, Christine, who'd represented Grandview Group for 9 years, handed the lead officer a prepared summary sheet. Christine had a way of presenting information that was simultaneously entirely polite and completely devastating. This is Miss Pewitt, she said. She's the CEO of Grandview Group and the owner of this property. She arrived today to find her villa occupied without authorization, her personal property destroyed, and herself physically assaulted by the individuals present. She gestured at the room. We have villa security footage, dashcam footage from the vehicle Miss Fox and her associates arrived in, and social media content the individuals themselves posted during 6 weeks of unauthorized use of the property. The officer looked around at the damage, at Kara, at me, at her friends, who had collectively decided to go very quiet. We'll need everyone's identification, he said. Alfred tried once more. He found me outside while the police took statements inside, standing near the car, breathing air that didn't smell like cigarettes and alcohol. Miss Pewitt. His voice was the same desperate parking lot whisper, same pleading frequency as before. I looked at him. My father, he started. No, I said. He blinked. Your father spent 6 years building a reputation for honesty. That reputation was what protected you the first time you made a mistake. I gave you a second chance because of Owen. Not because of you. Because of him. I let that sit. Your father's loyalty earned you one reprieve. It can't buy you two. Miss Pewitt, please, if you fire me, if this goes public, my dad's already sick. If he finds out what I did Alfred, I cut him off, not harshly, but completely. You used your father's good name as a shield after the car incident. You stood there telling me about Owen's health, and I believed you were sorry, and I let it go. Then you went home and kept lying to Kara. You kept using my car. You brought her here 6 more weeks. You let her destroy my property. You let her destroy. I stopped. I looked at the ground where the jade pieces now sat in an evidence bag inside. My chest was doing what it had been doing since I heard the crack, the specific, unhealing ache of something irreplaceable gone. You let her destroy the last thing I have of my mother, I said. And you were standing outside with sweet potatoes. Alfred had nothing to say. The consequences, I said, are yours to carry, not your father's. I went back inside. I went to the hospital that evening. My wrist was badly sprained. One impact to my side had bruised 2 ribs, and there was bruising along my jaw from the slap and along my arms from the group attack. The doctor documented everything. Standard procedure. Christine arranged for it to go straight to my legal team. I sat in the hospital room, holding the evidence bag with my mother's jade fragments. I'd asked to keep them with me. The officers had photographed everything already. The physical pieces were mine. I held the bag in my good hand, looking at the fragments through the plastic. 4 years old and dying in a hospital. My mother climbing a mountain on her knees to find me something to survive with. Her voice on her deathbed, pressing the pendant into my palm, asking me to keep it safe. I'd carried it every day for 33 years. 3 minutes of Kara Fox had ended that. I sat with it a long time, long enough that the evening light through the window shifted from gold to gray, long enough that I stopped trying to contain the grief and just let it exist, which was the only thing you could actually do with pain that had no practical solution. Then I made a call. My jeweler, a man who'd worked with rare stones for decades. I have fragments, I told him. Jade, they can't be restored to what they were. What can you do with them? He asked questions. I answered. We talked for 20 minutes. When I hung up, I had a plan. The fragments would be sealed in a custom glass medallion, preserved exactly as they were, suspended in clarity, visible. I'd wear it the way I'd worn the pendant. Different form, same weight. She'd still be with me, just differently. Owen Lawrence came to the hospital the next morning. He was thinner than I remembered, the lung condition having taken more than I'd seen in the brief moments I'd witnessed. He moved slowly, carefully, with the gait of someone who'd learned to pace himself, leaning on a cane. He stood in the doorway. His face wore an expression that wasn't the complicated one people make when managing someone else's feelings. It was simpler and harder than that. Pure shame. He stood without the cane for a moment, pressing his hands together in front of him. Miss Puet, he said. Owen. I gestured to the chair. Sit down, please. You shouldn't stand. I can stand for this. But he sat, because his body required it. He looked at me with the direct gaze of a man who decided not to look away from things. I heard everything. Alfred's boss called him, told him what happened. My son called me after. He shook his head. I drove for you 6 years, Miss Puet. 6 years. In that time you were never anything but decent to me. And his voice strained slightly, I asked you to take my son in. You asked me for an opportunity, I said. He's the one who decided what to do with it. I'm not here to excuse him. I know. I'm here because he pressed his hands together more firmly. I wanted you to hear it from me directly. What he did is a disgrace. What she did to your mother's necklace is something I can't. His voice broke there, briefly, then he collected it. I can't fix it. I know that. We sat quietly a moment. Owen, I said, you spent 6 years being reliable, honest. You never once took advantage of the trust extended to you. I know the difference between what you are and what Alfred chose to do. I paused. I won't hold you responsible for his choices. I never did. He looked at me. But I won't protect him from the consequences either. You understand that? Yes, he said quietly. I understand that. We sat a little longer. He told me about the lung treatment, progressing slowly. I told him about the jeweler, about what would become of the jade fragments. He listened with the attention of someone who understood exactly why it mattered. When he left, he stood at the door a moment. She would have been proud of you, he said. Your mother. I think you should know that. He left before I could answer. I looked at the evidence bag on the bedside table. Yeah, I thought. I think she would. Grandview Group's communications team released a statement 48 hours after the incident. Christine had written it. I'd approved it. Every word. Factual. Specific. Sourced. On the weekend of the 14th, Miss Elise Puet, CEO of Grandview Group, arrived at her private residence to discover it had been occupied without authorization for approximately 6 weeks. The occupants had caused substantial property damage, including irreparable destruction of a personal heirloom of significant sentimental value. Upon discovery, Miss Puet was physically assaulted by multiple individuals, resulting in documented injuries, including a sprained wrist, bruised ribs, and facial bruising. The individual who provided unauthorized access to the property is Alfred Lawrence, a company driver employed by Grandview Group, who misrepresented himself to the occupants as the company's CEO. The vehicle used to transport the occupants, a Maybach belonging to Grandview Group, was also used without authorization on multiple occasions. Grandview Group confirms Alfred Lawrence has been terminated. The company is pursuing civil and criminal proceedings on Miss Puet's behalf for property damage, unauthorized use of company assets, misrepresentation, and assault, Social media documentation, villa security footage, and dashcam footage have been preserved as evidence. The statement included 3 photographs: the wrecked living room, the cigarette burns on the carpet, and, at my explicit instruction, a photograph of the jade fragments in the evidence bag. I didn't release that photo for sympathy. I released it as evidence there was a legal reason to document the destroyed item's condition and value. That it was also quietly devastating wasn't something I'd engineered. It simply was what it was. By noon, the story was on 3 major news sites. By evening, it was everywhere. The comments were the kind I'd learned over years as a public figure not to read too closely, but Christine forwarded me a selection because some of them documented Kara's own social media posts, her followers rushing to contrast what she'd been posting for weeks against what had just come out. She'd posted a video from inside the villa, captioned, "Living my best life in our weekend house." That was 6 weeks ago. A photo of herself in the Maybach, when Bay has taste. She's sitting in the CEO's car. She called Miss Pruitt a freeloader in a comment thread on one of these posts while sitting in Miss Pruitt's car. That pendant, her mother did that for her, and Kara smashed it on the floor. I don't have words. The headline that spread widest was simple. Driver pretended to be CEO. Girlfriend assaulted the real one. Kara's employer, a mid-level fashion brand where she worked in marketing, released a brief statement by Tuesday confirming she was no longer with the company. Her friends began posting their own statements, all some variation of "I was there but didn't know who she was and didn't participate in the assault, and Kara told us she owned the place." Some of it was partly true. None of it was sufficient. Christine handled it all methodically, social media posts archived, statements noted, assault charges covering everyone who'd participated, villa security footage specific about who'd done what. Kara posted a video. Of course she did. 7 minutes filmed in her apartment, crying. The specific performance of someone who's watched enough apology videos online to know the format without quite grasping that it requires actual contrition to function. She explained she'd been misled, that Alfred had told her everything, and she'd had no reason to doubt him, that she was as much a victim of his lies as anyone, that Miss Pruitt had attacked her first, that the whole thing was being misrepresented. She didn't mention the pendant. She didn't mention calling her friends to beat me within an inch of my life. She didn't mention the 6 weeks of weekends at the villa, the social media posts, the disinfectant spray, the disposable seat covers, the note stuck to my seat. She got some sympathy in the comments, she always would. That's how it works. But the evidence was too complete. The villa footage too specific. Her own archived posts too cheerful and too recently dated for the victim narrative to hold. Grandview's PR team responded with exactly 3 sentences. The security footage from the property is complete. Social media posts, uploaded by the relevant individuals during the period in question, have been preserved. Both have been submitted to the investigating officers. The video came down by the next morning. The civil proceedings took months. Property damage, unauthorized use of company vehicles and property, assault, intentional destruction of personal property, misrepresentation of company authority. Christine built a thorough case. Every element was documented. The jade pendant's value was assessed by 2 independent appraisers. Its sentimental significance was established through medical records, family records, and the temple's own records of my mother's pilgrimage. That last piece took some digging. My mother's story wasn't something I'd ever publicized. Christine handled finding the temple records, confirming the date, establishing the documentary trail with the respect the task deserved. When the appraisal came back, the pendant's financial value was noted. Then Christine added a line to the civil filing that I approved. The item cannot be replaced or restored. Its destruction represents an irreversible loss. That line was the one that mattered. Alfred settled quickly. He had no money to fight it. He'd lost his job and had no protection left, now that the company he'd claimed to run had confirmed he was an employee of 7 months. The settlement covered his share of the damages and included a formal acknowledgement of what he'd done. In lieu of the full civil amount, which he couldn't pay, he signed a consent agreement that would follow his professional record. He was effectively blacklisted from chauffeur work at any company connected to Grandview Group's network, which in this city's industry was substantial. Kara fought it longer, with the energy of someone who'd spent her life believing performance could substitute for substance, that if she framed the narrative correctly, the underlying facts could be managed. Her lawyer wasn't as good as Christine. The footage was too specific, the medical records too clear, her own social media posts, the Maybach photo, the villa video, the freeloader comment, all exhibits in the proceeding. The hearing was on a Tuesday in November. I attended. I didn't need to. Christine could have managed it alone, but I wanted to be there. Kara saw me when she came in. She looked different from the woman who'd held me by the hair in my own living room, still well-dressed, old habit, but something in her posture had changed. The certainty was gone. What was left was smaller and more aware of itself. The proceedings ran 3 hours. At the end, the judgment covered property damages, medical expenses, and the irreplaceable item assessment for the pendant. When it was over, Kara stood near the door while her lawyer gathered documents. She looked at me across the room. "Miss Pwitt," she said, her voice different now, smaller. "I'm sorry." I looked at her for a moment. She meant it, I think, not completely. There was still the residue of someone who'd spent the whole proceeding hoping for a different outcome. But in that moment, with nothing left to calculate, something genuine surfaced. "No," I said, "you're not sorry you broke it. You're sorry you found out who it belonged to." I picked up my bag and walked out. The jeweler finished the pendant 6 weeks after the hearing. It was different from the original, smaller, suspended in glass, the pieces of jade visible through the clarity of the enclosure, not hidden, not softened, exactly what they were. Fragments of something that had once been whole, now this. I held it in my palm before putting it on and thought about her climbing that mountain, step by step, bow by bow, knees torn open. I thought about what a person does when told something they love can't be saved, and decides to climb anyway. I put the pendant on. The glass was cool against my collarbone. The jade inside, smaller now, present, not the same, still here, still carried. Alfred became what he'd made himself, a cautionary tale, the driver who borrowed his employer's life and wore it until it was taken back. That's the thing about borrowed things, they fit well enough to fool people. They don't fit well enough to survive scrutiny. Kara eventually moved to another city. The viral headline followed her through any professional network that searched her name. She wasn't destroyed, not literally, not permanently, people rebuild. But the version of her life she'd been building, the wealthy CEO's girlfriend, the Maybach passenger, the weekend villa woman, that was gone completely, and the ruins of it stayed public, documented, searchable. Owen recovered slowly. I heard this from Christine, who heard it from the hospital network managing his specialist care. I'd arranged continued coverage for him, without telling him first, through a benefit program Grandview Group offered former employees. When he found out, he called me. "You didn't have to," he said. "I know," I said. A long pause. Then, "Thank you. You drove me honestly for 6 years," I said. "That should count for something that lasts." I still drive to work every morning. New driver, good references, background checked, clean record. He doesn't bring anyone along. He arrives on time. The Maybach stays clean, the routes are direct, and the passenger seat is empty. On the 3rd morning, he handed me coffee without being asked. Black, correct temperature, my preference already in his file, and said nothing else. I looked out the window as the city moved past, my mother's pendant against my collarbone, different weight now, different form, same promise. She climbed a mountain on her knees for me. I can survive anything someone like Kara Fox attempts. I always could. I just needed reminding.